The text message glowed on my phone screen, each word a fresh stab of panic. They know, Chloe. You need to run. No. My breath hitched in my throat, the air in my small Brooklyn apartment suddenly thick and suffocating. I glanced around the familiar cluttered space, the mismatched furniture, the stacks of books threatening to topple, the worn-out rug that had witnessed countless late-night study sessions and tearful phone calls. None of it felt safe anymore. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. Who knew? How could they? Just last week, everything had been normal. Tedious, maybe, with endless shifts at the diner and the constant struggle to make rent, but normal nonetheless. Now normal felt like a distant, impossible dream. Another text buzzed through, this one shorter, more urgent. The West Side Docks. Midnight. Don't trust anyone else. It was from Marcus, the only person besides Chloe who knew everything. A wave of nausea rolled through me. The West Side Docks? That was miles away, and it was already past 11. I scrambled to my feet, my mind racing. What do I take? Where do I even go? My passport was expired, my bank account barely scraping by. I was a nobody, a small cog in the giant machine of New York City. How could I possibly outrun them? A sharp rap on my apartment door sent a jolt of pure terror through me. It wasn't a friendly knock. It was insistent, demanding. My blood ran cold. They had found me already. Frozen in place, I barely dared to breathe. The knocking came again, louder this time, accompanied by a gruff voice. Chloe? We know you're in there. Open up. That wasn't right. They knew my name was Anna. Chloe was the reason I was in this mess. A wave of guilt washed over me, sharp and bitter. I had promised her I would do this one stupid favor, this ridiculous blind date. Now both our lives were in danger. Footsteps echoed from the hallway, heavy and purposeful. They weren't going to wait for me to open the door. Panic clawed at my throat, choking me. Think, Anna, think. My gaze fell on the fire escape outside my window, a rusty metal ladder leading down to the alleyway below. It was a long drop, and the alley was probably filled with who knew what, but it was my only chance. With trembling hands, I fumbled with the window latch, finally managing to slide it open. A blast of cold night air filled the room, carrying the distant sounds of the city. I swung one leg over the sill, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. Suddenly, the door splintered inwards with a deafening crash. Two figures filled the doorway, their faces grim and determined. My breath caught in my throat. They were big, their eyes glinting with a predatory intensity that sent shivers down my spine. There she is, one of them growled, lunging towards me. With a desperate surge of adrenaline, I pushed off the windowsill, my body plummeting into the darkness. The rusty metal of the fire escape scraped against my hands as I grabbed hold, my muscles screaming in protest. I scrambled down, the ground rushing up to meet me. The alley was dark and reeked of garbage, but it was freedom. I landed with a jarring thud, my ankle twisting beneath me. A sharp pain shot up my leg, but I ignored it, pushing myself to run. The sounds of my pursuers crashing through the window spurred me on. I stumbled through the narrow alleyway, my lungs burning, the fear a cold knot in my stomach. I had to make it to the docks. I had to find Marcus. He was my only hope. Chapter 1. My lungs burned with every ragged breath, the cold night air a sharp, clean pain. The alleyway was a chaotic maze of overflowing dumpsters and rusted fire escapes, a labyrinth designed to confuse anyone foolish enough to enter it. I stumbled, my injured ankle sending a fresh spike of agony up my leg. I had to keep going. The image of those two men, their eyes glinting with a primal, inhuman hunger, was all the fuel I needed. They weren't just men. I didn't know what they were, but I knew with a chilling certainty that they weren't going to stop until they found me. After what felt like an eternity, I burst from the alleyway onto a wide street, my gaze scanning frantically for a way to disappear. My phone, still clutched in my hand, was buzzing with Marcus's desperate texts. Just get to the docks. I'll explain everything. Just get here. But the docks were still a long way off. I saw a cab light up in the distance and, ignoring the throbbing pain in my ankle, sprinted towards it. The driver, a kind-faced man with tired eyes, looked at me with concern as I slid into the back seat, gasping for air. "Where to, miss?" he asked, his voice a low rumble. "The West Side docks," I managed to say between gasps. He nodded and the car pulled away from the curb. As the city lights blurred outside the window, the frantic panic began to subside, replaced by a cold, hard confusion. Why were they looking for Chloe and not me? And what did this have to do with my blind date? The truth was, the blind date was my fault. It had been a last-minute favor for my roommate and best friend, Chloe, who had a disastrous history with online dating. She had set up a blind date with a man she'd met on a new exclusive app, but her last-minute panic had been so severe she had begged me to go in her place. "Just go act completely insane and scare him off for me," she had pleaded, her eyes wide and panicked. "You're the only one I trust to pull this off." I was a terrible liar and an even worse actress, but Chloe had been my rock through so much. I had agreed, a simple, stupid favor that now felt like the single worst decision of my life. The date was supposed to be a disaster, a 2-hour ordeal of me inventing a ludicrous past and him looking for a polite way to leave. It was supposed to be a funny story we'd laugh about later. Instead, it had become the anchor point of a terrifying nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I had spent the last 2 hours on my feet, working the dinner rush at the diner, and was now a sweaty, disheveled mess. The West Side docks were a desolate place, not where I had planned to be. I didn't want to go to a place where I was so vulnerable, but Marcus was the only one who had ever truly seen me, truly known what I was running from. He had promised to keep me safe and I had to trust him. The cab pulled up to the curb and I paid the driver, my eyes scanning the dark, shadowy streets. The air here was different, colder, with the salty tang of the sea. The warehouses were silent, their windows dark and empty. I walked slowly, my injured ankle screaming in protest. The city sounds faded, replaced by the rhythmic sloshing of the water against the docks and the haunting cry of a seagull. My phone buzzed in my hand again. "Were you Anna?" My heart leapt into my throat. The message wasn't from Marcus. It was from an unknown number. I stared at the screen, a new wave of fear washing over me. They knew. A sharp, menacing growl echoed from the shadows of an alleyway, and a dark, hulking figure stepped into the moonlight. It was one of them, his eyes gleaming with a strange, feral light. He was joined by 2 others, their forms shifting and changing in the shadows, their inhuman features becoming more pronounced. They looked like... No, it was impossible. My mind was playing tricks on me. My throat went dry. I tried to back away to run, but my ankle buckled and I fell to the ground with a cry of pain. They advanced, a slow, predatory walk. I was trapped. "Chloe," the first one growled, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. "The Alpha will have your head." I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for impact, for the end. But the end never came. Instead, a new voice, a deep, commanding voice, sliced through the tense silence. "That's enough." I opened my eyes and looked up. A tall, powerful figure stood in the shadows, his presence radiating an aura of absolute authority. He was dressed in a dark, expensive suit, and his eyes, a shocking vibrant green, seemed to glow in the darkness. He took a step forward and the 3 hulking figures cowered back, whimpering like frightened dogs. "You're not supposed to be here," he said, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "Leave. Now." They turned and fled, disappearing back into the darkness of the alleyway. The man turned his attention to me, his gaze intense, assessing. I couldn't move. He was the man from the blind date. The man who was supposed to be a boring, nerdy tech CEO, not a powerful, commanding figure who could make monsters cower with a single word. "You're not Chloe," he said, his voice softer but no less commanding. "Who are you?" My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. I was a terrible liar, and now I was cornered by my boss, a man who had just shown a terrifying, otherworldly power. My mind raced, but no words would come out. He was watching me, his gaze almost physical, like he was looking into my very soul. "I asked you a question," he said, taking another step closer. "And I don't like to be lied to." His words were a threat, a promise, a command. I could feel my body trembling. He wasn't just my boss. He was something more. And I had a terrible sinking feeling that he knew everything. The silence that followed his question was a suffocating blanket, heavy and thick with unspoken truths. His green eyes, sharp and intelligent, held mine with an intensity that made my entire body hum with a nervous energy I couldn't control. He didn't blink. He didn't move. He simply waited, and in that waiting, every lie I had ever told felt as though it were glowing in the dark for him to see. I don't know what you're talking about, I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. The lie was pathetic even to my own ears. I was still clutching my phone, the screen still showing the text from the unknown number. My ankle throbbed, a dull, insistent ache that was nothing compared to the sharp terror that had seized me. He took another slow, deliberate step forward and my breath hitched. The air around him seemed to crackle, charged with an almost physical force. A low, earthy scent, like pine trees after a rainstorm, suddenly filled my senses, making the city's usual exhaust and grime smell insignificant. "Don't lie to me," he said, his voice dropping to a low growl that vibrated deep in my chest. "Those wolves were looking for you. They called you Chloe. And you were running. Why?" My mind raced, scrambling for a believable story. I was an awful liar, but the truth was too insane to ever be believed. My boss, a man who seemed to belong in a penthouse and a boardroom, was a werewolf, and his rivals were hunting me because of my friend. I had to create a distraction. "Chloe is my friend," I blurted out, the words tumbling over themselves. I was on a blind date with you. For her. I'm not Chloe. My name is Anna. Anna Evans." His eyes narrowed slightly, a spark of something unreadable flickering in their depths. "The blind date," he mused, the words a low, dangerous rumble. He had dismissed the date earlier with a single contemptuous look, but now he was considering it, connecting the dots I had laid out in a clumsy attempt to distract him. "You were the one who was supposed to be scaring me off." The statement wasn't a question but an observation. He was remembering the conversation he'd had with Chloe online, the one that had led to my presence at that restaurant. He knew what my friend's plan was, and that made me feel even more exposed. "Yes," I admitted, the lie now part of the truth. "She didn't want to come. She's shy. I was doing her a favor." A tense silence stretched between us. He was watching me, his gaze so penetrating I felt as though he could see the wild pulse hammering in my throat. I couldn't look away, even though every instinct told me to run. The air was thick with the scent of pine and something else, something primal and wild that emanated from him. It was mesmerizing, terrifying, and inexplicably alluring. Finally he spoke, his voice quiet. "Get in." He gestured with a nod of his head to a black, sleek car parked discreetly in the shadows. "What?" My heart hammered against my ribs. "No, I'm not. I don't know you." A faint, almost imperceptible smirk touched the corner of his lips. "You were just about to go on a blind date with me, and now you don't know me?" His eyes held a flicker of cold amusement. "We can stand here and wait for those wolves to come back, or you can get in the car." My options were simple and terrifying. Run and face whatever was lurking in the dark. Or get in the car with my equally terrifying boss, a man who had just saved my life from something I couldn't possibly comprehend. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice trembling as I limped toward the car. "Somewhere safe," he said, opening the passenger door for me with a quick, fluid motion. "I have questions, Anna Evans. And you have answers." I slid into the plush leather seat, the car's interior a stark contrast to the gritty, unkempt streets we'd just come from. He got in, the car silent as he started the engine. The powerful purr of the motor was the only sound for a long time. I risked a glance at him, his face illuminated by the faint glow of the dashboard. He was handsome in a severe, chiseled way, his jawline sharp, his brow furrowed in concentration. The corporate suit he wore seemed ill-fitting for the kind of power he had just displayed. "Those wolves," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "What were they?" He was silent for a moment, his hands gripping the steering wheel with an almost bone-crushing intensity. "They are not of my pack," he finally said, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. The word pack landed in the air between us like a physical object. It wasn't a term I understood, not in the way he had said it. Sounded like family but also like something more, something ancient and wild. They were looking for a mate, he continued, his voice low and guttural. And they believed Chloe was the one they were searching for. A mate. The word echoed in my head. I had no idea what it meant, but the way he had said it, the tension in his shoulders, made me realize it was something sacred and dangerous. I was not Chloe, but I had a terrible sinking feeling that I had just stepped into her shoes in more ways than one. The car moved effortlessly through the empty night streets, leaving the docks far behind. I was now in a world I didn't understand, trapped in a lie I had created for my friend, and a powerful man was demanding the truth. He was my boss, the alpha of a hidden world, and he thought I was his intended. He didn't know I was a fraud, and I had to keep it that way. But as I looked at his profile, I knew my lie had an expiration date. He had saved my life. He knew I was lying, and he wouldn't stop until he knew the whole truth. The only question was, what would he do when he found out? The weight of that question settled in the silence between us, heavy and full of unspoken consequences. The night was just beginning, and I was about to find out exactly what it meant to be a wolf. A wolf something. Something much more than a blind date. Chapter 3. The city lights blurred into a river of color as we sped through the night. The silence in the car was heavier than the humid air outside, and I was hyper-aware of every minute detail. The low thrum of the engine, the subtle scent of pine and rain that clung to him, the way his hands, large and capable, gripped the steering wheel. He hadn't said another word since revealing the horrifying truth about the wolves, and I didn't dare break the silence. My mind was a whirlwind of frantic questions. What was a mate? Why did they think it was Chloe? And most importantly, what would happen when Julian realized I was a fraud? We left the gritty industrial landscape of the docks behind, entering a part of the city I'd only ever seen in movies and glossy magazines. The buildings grew taller, their facades gleaming with glass and steel. He took a final turn onto a secluded street and pulled into a parking garage beneath a towering residential skyscraper. The car's engine died with a soft click, plunging us into a silence so profound I could hear my own heart hammering against my ribs. Home, he said simply, his voice a low rumble in the darkness. We can talk here. I didn't argue. My ankle was throbbing and my mind felt numb from the emotional whiplash of the last few hours. I followed him into the elevator, the doors closing behind us with a quiet hiss. The ride up was excruciatingly long, each ascending floor feeling like a step further into a world I was not meant to inhabit. The numbers on the display climbed higher and higher, a visual representation of the chasm between our lives. When the doors finally parted, I stepped out into a space that took my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, a glittering carpet of lights stretching out to the horizon. The penthouse was a study in sleek, minimalist design, clean lines, muted colors and high-end furniture that looked both impossibly comfortable and untouchable. It was the complete opposite of my cozy, cluttered apartment, a testament to a life lived on an entirely different plane. Julian led me to a plush, low-slung sofa and gestured for me to sit. You're hurt, he stated, his green eyes fixed on my ankle which I had been trying to hide. He knelt down without a word, his touch sending a jolt of alarm through me as he gently examined the twisted limb. His fingers were warm and surprisingly gentle, a stark contrast to the dangerous power he had shown earlier. You need ice. And a bandage. I watched him, my mind unable to process the dichotomy of his character. This was the same man who had sent shivers down my spine in a dark alley, who had spoken of packs and mates. And yet here he was, tending to my injury with a kindness that felt utterly disarming. The scent of pine was stronger now, a clean, woody aroma that was strangely comforting. Don't worry, I said, trying to pull my foot away. I'm fine. It's just a sprain. He ignored me, rising to his feet and disappearing into what I assumed was his kitchen. He returned a moment later with a bag of ice wrapped in a towel and a first aid kit. He sat on the floor in front of me, his knees almost touching mine. It was an intimate position, one that made my cheeks flush with a heat that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. He carefully elevated my foot, propped it on a cushion and wrapped the ice pack around my ankle. I asked you a question, Anna, he said, his voice quiet. And I'll ask it again. Why did you lie to me? The directness of his question made my heart pound. I couldn't run anymore. There was nowhere to go. I took a deep breath and decided to tell him the truth, the simple, embarrassing truth. I didn't lie to you, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I lied to Chloe's date. The date was for her. I'm her friend. She was too scared to go and she asked me to stand in for her. I was supposed to be as weird and obnoxious as possible so that he would leave me alone. A flicker of emotion, something I couldn't quite decipher, crossed his face. So you're saying that you intentionally tried to scare me off? He asked, a hint of dark amusement in his voice. I nodded, my gaze fixed on his. That was the plan. It was supposed to be a favor. A quick, painless way for her to get out of it. He sat back on his heels, a long, contemplative silence settling over us. He was a puzzle I couldn't solve. One moment he was a terrifying predator. The next he was tending to my sprained ankle with a gentleness that made my breath catch in my throat. I believe you, he said finally, his words so soft I almost didn't hear them. It makes sense. The scent, it's close to hers but not the same. It's what made me second-guess the initial contact with her online. I could tell something was off. Now I know what it was. My blood ran cold. He had known all along? Known that the woman he was talking to was not the one he was supposed to be looking for? And he had gone on the date anyway? The realization was both terrifying and strangely exhilarating. He had seen through my clumsy lie and instead of leaving he had come after me. What is a mate? I asked, my voice trembling. And why were they looking for Chloe? He took a deep breath and the powerful scent of pine and something else, something wild and untamed, filled the air. A mate is a soul bond, he said, his voice low and solemn. A werewolf only has one. Our world is dying. The bonds are becoming rarer and we are on the brink of extinction. When a male wolf senses his mate, it's a primal, undeniable pull. It is everything. Our entire world revolves around it. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. And they thought Chloe was yours? No, he said, and his green eyes locked with mine, a new intense light in their depths. They thought she was theirs. The rival pack. The one I just drove off. My breath hitched. And you? He reached out, his hand wrapping around my ankle, his touch sending a warm, tingling sensation up my leg. He didn't answer my question. He just looked at me, his gaze holding me captive. I didn't feel the pull to Chloe's scent, he finally said, his voice a low, gravelly confession. I've been searching for years. But when I met you, when I was with you. He shook his head, a mixture of disbelief and something else I couldn't quite name on his face. You smell like home. Chapter 4. His words hung in the air between us, heavy and full of a meaning I couldn't possibly grasp. You smell like home. The phrase wasn't a compliment or a confession. It was a simple, profound statement of fact. My heart, which had been racing a frantic rhythm, now felt like a bird that had just flown into a window, dazed and disoriented. He was still kneeling, his large hand resting on my ankle, a warm anchor in a world that had just been turned on its head. I don't understand, I finally managed to say, my voice trembling. He rose slowly, his gaze never leaving mine. It's not a logical thing, Anna. It's a primal thing. A scent. A connection. Something a wolf recognizes instinctively. He moved to a low-slung cabinet and pulled out a bottle of amber liquid and 2 glasses. Scotch? I think you could use a drink. I nodded, my mind still reeling. He poured a finger of the liquid into 1 glass and handed it to me. The glass was cool against my skin, the liquid inside a deep, rich color. The scent was a heady mix of oak and smoke. I took a small sip, the burning sensation in my throat a welcome shock that brought me back to reality. The mate bond is sacred, he said, taking a sip from his own glass. When a wolf finds his mate, it's a bond for life. It's a physical, emotional, and spiritual connection. It's a part of our biology. It's what gives an alpha his strength, his family, and his legacy. We've been looking for years, searching for a scent that would just feel right. He paused, a flicker of vulnerability in his guarded eyes. When my enforcers went looking for the girl from the dating app, they were following a scent. It wasn't my mate's scent. It was close, but it was off. Something was missing. They thought they had found something that was close enough, a faint echo of what they believed to be a mate scent, but they were wrong. It was her friend. He gestured with his chin towards me. It was you. My blood ran cold, a wave of understanding washing over me. The wolves from the alley had smelled Chloe on me, the scent of the other woman I was pretending to be, and they had been confused but still believed she was theirs. The rival pack. The one he had said was also looking for a mate. He had saved me from being taken by them, not because he was protecting Chloe, but because they had mistakenly identified me as an echo of a scent they had been searching for. I've been in this city for 6 years, he continued, his voice softer now, more personal. I've been on a dozen blind dates, all set up by my pack members who thought they had found a promising lead. I've met 100 different women, and not one of them, not a single one, ever smelled like you. Like home. He finished his drink, the empty glass in his hand a stark symbol of his finality on the subject. And now they know you exist. They've seen you. They know you are not Chloe, but they know you're tied to me. They won't stop. Not now. Not ever. He moved to the window, his large frame silhouetted against the glittering city lights. I felt a surge of panic. This was too much. The blind date, the lies, the wolves, the scent, the whole impossible truth. It was all spiraling out of control. I needed to get out of here. Back to my own life. A normal life. I need to go, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I stood up, but my injured ankle gave way and I stumbled. He was there in an instant, his hands on my arms, steadying me. The contact was electric, a jolt of pure energy that made every nerve ending in my body stand at attention. The scent of pine was overwhelming, a dizzying mix of comfort and danger. You can't go, he said, his voice low and firm. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. They'll find you, Anna. They'll follow your scent. They know your friend. They'll use her to get to you. You are not safe. His words hit me like a physical blow. The thought of Chloe being in danger because of my stupid favor, because of my clumsy lies, made my stomach clench with guilt and fear. I can't stay here, I said, a new kind of panic rising in my chest. You're my boss. This is insane. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I'm not just your boss, Anna. And you are not just a temp. You are something my world has been searching for generations. And now that I've found you, I'm not going to let you go. He released my arms and stepped back, giving me a moment to breathe. He led me to a bedroom, a spacious, minimalist room with a king-sized bed and windows overlooking the city. You will stay here tonight. You'll be safe here. And tomorrow we'll talk. We'll talk about everything. But for now you rest. I will be just down the hall. He left the room, the door clicking shut behind him, leaving me alone in the luxurious, silent space. I was trapped. Not in a physical sense, but in a way that felt far more permanent. I was in my boss's penthouse, a man who was an alpha, a man who believed I was his mate, a man whose rival pack wanted to use me to destroy him. My life, my simple, ordinary, boring life was over. And a new, terrifying, and strangely thrilling chapter had just begun. I had just been trying to do a favor for a friend, and I had somehow stumbled into a world of wolves, lies, and a powerful, dangerous man who believed I was his destiny. The blind date had been a complete disaster, but the consequence was something far more terrifying and exhilarating than I could have ever imagined. I was no longer an observer in this story. I was a part of it. And there was no turning back. Chapter 5. I woke up to a silence so profound it was almost deafening. For a moment I was disoriented, the unfamiliar softness of the sheets and the sheer size of the room jarring me from my sleep. I sat up, my mind slowly piecing together the events of the previous night. The blind date, the frantic run through the docks, the wolves, and my boss Julian Kincaid, revealing a world I never knew existed. My ankle was no longer a throbbing mess. The dull ache had been replaced by a faint tingling warmth. He had healed me. My stomach clenched with a mix of awe and terror. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The city, which had been a glittering carpet of light last night, was now a bustling landscape of concrete and glass. The view was breathtaking, but it only served to emphasize how far I was from my own reality. I was in the penthouse of an alpha, a powerful werewolf, and my boss. The irony was almost comical if it weren't so terrifying. A soft knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. "Anna, may I come in?" Julian's voice was low and steady, a calming presence I had already begun to associate with a terrifying sense of safety. "Yes," I called out, my voice a little shaky. The door opened and he stepped inside, a mug of steaming coffee in one hand. He was dressed in a simple dark t-shirt and sweatpants, a far more relaxed look than the severe suits I was used to seeing him in. The change in clothes did nothing to diminish his powerful presence. If anything, it made it more palpable, more real. The scent of him, pine and earth, filled the air, and a strange sense of comfort settled over me, a feeling that felt both wrong and utterly right. "How's your ankle?" he asked, his gaze fixed on my foot. "It's better," I admitted, flexing my toes. "Did you?" He nodded once. "My healing is not as strong as an omega's, but I can accelerate the process. It's a temporary fix. You'll need to rest it." He placed the coffee on the nightstand and sat on the edge of the bed, the mattress shifting slightly under his weight. The casual intimacy of the moment was almost too much to handle. This was my boss. The man I had intentionally tried to scare away from my best friend. Now here he was, treating me with a concern that felt too personal, too deep. "We need to talk," I said, my voice firmer now. He nodded, a serious expression on his face. "I know. Let me get you something to eat first. Then we'll go somewhere private. There's someone I want you to meet." We went to the kitchen, where a spread of food was laid out on a large marble island. I ate in silence, my mind racing. What was happening? How did I get here? It felt like a dream, a nightmare I was still trying to wake up from. He led me to a private study, a room lined with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and dominated by a large mahogany desk. A man was sitting in a chair facing the window. He was older, with a kind face and a calm demeanor that seemed to be a direct contrast to Julian's intensity. "Anna, this is Alaric, my beta. And the pack's historian," Julian said, gesturing to the man. "Alaric, this is Anna Evans, the woman I told you about." Alaric turned and his eyes, a warm hazel color, met mine. He gave me a gentle smile. "It's an honor to meet you, Anna. We've been searching for a long time." His words confirmed my worst fears. They weren't just searching for a mate for Julian. They were searching for something else, something bigger. "You're not just a mate," Alaric said, his voice soft and soothing. "You're a healer, a rare gift, an omega with the power to heal not just bones and flesh, but the very spirit of a wolf. It is a gift that our pack has lost for generations. And with it we've lost our way. We've become—" He hesitated, glancing at Julian. "We've become hardened. The old ways were about strength, yes, but also about heart. We need a healer to remind us of that." Julian's eyes were fixed on me, a new kind of emotion in their depths. Hope. This wasn't just about a bond or a legacy. It was about the survival of his pack, his family. And he was looking at me like I held the key to their future. "The wolves who were chasing you belong to a rival pack," Julian said, his voice low and dangerous. "They are led by a man named Elias. He is ruthless and desperate. He has been searching for a mate for years, and he believes he has the right to take a mate from my territory. The moment he smelled you, even that faint scent he got from your friend, he thought you were his. A prize to be taken, a tool to be used against me." I swallowed hard, the weight of their words settling in my stomach like a stone. "And you think I'm yours?" He didn't hesitate. "I know it." Alaric nodded. "The mate bond is not just about a scent, Anna. It's about a connection. Julian has never felt it. Not with anyone. But with you, it's as though he has found a piece of himself he didn't know was missing." My mind reeled. I was a diner waitress. I was a temp. I was a girl who lived in a tiny apartment and worried about rent. I was not a mate, a healer, or the key to a dying race of supernaturals. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice raw with emotion. Julian knelt in front of me, taking my hands in his. His touch was warm and firm, a silent promise. Nothing. I want nothing from you. Except for you to be safe. You can't go back to your life, Anna. Not now. Elias will find you. He will use you to get to me. You are no longer just a temp. You're a part of my pack. A part of my life. You're my mate. His words weren't a plea. They were a statement. Fuck. He wasn't asking for my permission. He was simply stating the new reality. The blind date had not been a disaster. It had been destiny. And I was standing on the precipice of a choice that would change everything. The rival pack, my boss, his destiny, and my life. It was all tangled up in a web of lies and ancient prophecies, and I had a terrible feeling that there was no way out. Chapter 6. Julian's words weren't a plea. They were a statement of fact. My life as I knew it was over. I was a part of his world now, a pawn in a larger game I never wanted to play. I looked from Julian's intense, hopeful eyes to Alaric's gentle, knowing ones. They weren't asking me to sacrifice my life. They were simply telling me I had no choice, that the path had already been chosen for me. The terror I felt was still there, a cold knot in my stomach, but for the first time, a new, strange emotion joined it. A sense of belonging. The scent of pine and earth that radiated from Julian felt like a pole, an anchor in the storm of my emotions. I can't go back, I said, the words a raw, fragile confession. I know. Julian's hand tightened on mine, a silent promise. No, you can't. But we're here. We will protect you. My pack will protect you. I swallowed hard, the weight of the last few hours settling heavily on my shoulders. I was a waitress, not a warrior. I was a temp, not a healer. But I was here in this penthouse, with a powerful alpha who believed I was his destiny. And for some insane, illogical reason, a part of me believed him too. What do? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. You stay here, he said, his voice firm and steady. You are safe here. We will work to make sure you stay safe. And you will begin to understand. You are not a pawn. You are an essential part of who we are. Of who I am. The sound of a distant alarm, a loud, blaring siren, suddenly cut through the quiet of the penthouse. Julian's head snapped up, his eyes immediately going to the panoramic window. His body tensed, the relaxed posture he had assumed earlier gone, replaced by the coiled readiness of a predator. What's that? I asked, my heart hammering against my ribs. A perimeter breach, Alaric said, his voice grim. They're here. Julian's gaze locked on mine, a dark, primal rage simmering in their green depths. Elias. He won't wait. He knows you're here, Anna. He's coming for you. He turned to Alaric. Get the rest of the pack in place. Lock down the building. I'll go meet him. Julian, no. I cried out, grabbing his arm. You can't go alone. He looked at me, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. I'm the alpha, Anna. This is my fight. He started to walk away, but a wave of dizzying energy washed over me, a strange electric current that pulsed from my fingertips to my toes. It was an instinctive, protective feeling, a need to keep him from harm. I didn't think, I just acted. I grabbed his arm and a light, a soft, ethereal blue, pulsed from my hands. It was the healing light. The one I had used on the injured boy in my visions. Julian stopped, his eyes widening in shock. He looked at my hands, at the faint glow that was spreading from my touch, and then back at me. You're healing. It's not just a gift, Alaric said, his voice filled with awe. It's a shield. A protector. Julian looked at me, a new kind of fierce resolve in his eyes. You're coming with me. What? I exclaimed, my mind racing. I can't fight. I don't know how to fight. You don't have to, he said, his voice low and intense. You just have to be with me. We took a service elevator down to the garage, where the rest of Julian's pack was gathered, their faces grim and determined. They were a mix of men and women, their eyes all holding the same fierce loyalty to their alpha. When they saw me, there was a flash of surprise, but no animosity. Just a tense curiosity. This is Anna, Julian announced, his voice a low command. She's my mate, and she's a healer. She will be with me. A ripple of murmured assent went through the group. They accepted his word without question. Their alpha had found his mate, and that was all that mattered. The battle was brutal and swift. The rival pack, a group of 5 hulking werewolves, had breached the parking garage. Their leader, Elias, a large, brutish man with eyes full of a dark, possessive hunger. He was terrifying, his body a coiled mass of muscle and menace. "Julian," he snarled, his voice a low, feral growl. "You have what is mine. Give her to me." "She is not yours, Elias," Julian said, his voice a dangerous, low rumble. "She never was. She is mine." And then the fight began. Julian fought with a power and ferocity that was breathtaking, a blur of motion and raw strength. He was a force of nature, a true alpha. But Elias was just as powerful, driven by a desperate, possessive rage. I watched, my heart in my throat, as they clashed, a whirlwind of muscle and fury. I wanted to help, but I had no idea how. Then I saw it. Elias landed a blow, a bone-crushing hit to Julian's side that sent him staggering back, a low groan escaping his lips. A dark, black stain spread across his shirt. He was hurt, and something inside me clicked. This was an emergency. The kind of emergency Julian had mentioned. I rushed forward, my hands extended. "Julian, let me help you." He looked at me, his eyes clouded with pain. "Anna, stay back. It's too dangerous." But I didn't listen. I put my hands on his side, and a wave of pure white-hot energy erupted from my fingertips, a pulse of life and warmth that flowed into his wound. I wasn't just healing his physical injury, I was pouring my strength, my essence into him. His eyes widened, a look of pure shock on his face as he felt the surge of power. The wound closed, the dark stain fading. Elias watched, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and disbelief. "What is this? You're not just a healer. You're an Omega with a soul bond. You're a true mate." The realization seemed to drain the fight from him. He couldn't win against that. Not against the combined power of an alpha and his true mate. Julian, his strength renewed, looked at me, a silent question in his eyes. I gave him a small, determined nod. He turned to Elias, his voice a cold, final command. "Get out," he said, his voice laced with the full force of his alpha command. "And never return." Elias and his pack turned and fled, their forms disappearing into the night. Julian's pack cheered, a loud, triumphant roar that echoed through the empty garage. I stood there, my hands trembling, my body exhausted but filled with a sense of purpose. I had done it. I had helped. Julian walked over to me, his hands reaching out to gently cup my face. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a new kind of awe. "You saved me," he whispered. "You're even more powerful than I thought." I leaned into his touch, my exhaustion finally catching up with me. I was no longer afraid. I was home. The blind date had been a complete disaster, a stupid lie that had landed me in the middle of a war between werewolves. But it had also led me to him, to a world I never knew existed, and to a destiny I never could have imagined. I had been searching for my place in the world, and it turns out I had found it. Right here, in the arms of a man who was not just my boss, not just an alpha but my true mate. And so, Anna's blind date wasn't a disaster, it was her destiny. She found herself at the heart of a hidden world, where a simple favor for a friend led her to the alpha of a powerful pack and a truth that changed everything. The man she was meant to run from became the one she could no longer live without. Her old life is gone, but a new, exhilarating journey has just begun, with a mate by her side who will protect her from every enemy, human or otherwise. This is just the beginning of Anna and Julian's story. The world of werewolves is filled with secrets, power struggles, and unexpected bonds. If you loved their journey, you'll want to see what happens next. Subscribe now to my channel where we'll dive deeper into the world of Blind Date with the Alpha. Don't miss out on the next chapter of this incredible story.